My wife sent a drunken selfie from Vegas. Married my boss. Don't wait up. I replied, perfect. Then I froze our accounts and called my lawyer. When she landed back home, the police were waiting at the gate. You always hear that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's a good line for a tourist slogan, but it's a terrible plan for a life. The truth is, nothing stays in Vegas. It follows you home, usually in the form of a hangover, an empty wallet, or in my case, a felony charge for my wife. The text came at 2:17 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I was in a deep sleep, the kind you only get after a brutal 60-hour work week. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a persistent, angry sound. I fumbled for it, squinting at the bright screen. It was from my wife, Evelyn. She was in Las Vegas for a 3-day marketing conference with her boss, a slick, overt executive named Marcus Vance. The message was a selfie. Evelyn, looking flushed and drunk, was wearing a cheap sequin veil and holding a bottle of champagne. Next to her, grinning like an idiot, was Marcus, wearing a plastic top hat. He had his arms slung around her shoulders, and on her left hand, where my engagement ring and our wedding band used to be. There was a gaudy, ridiculous-looking costume jewelry ring. The text underneath the photo was a short, brutal gut punch. Married my boss. Don't wait up. I stared at the photo for what felt like an hour. The cheap flashing lights of a Vegas wedding chapel were reflected in her eyes. The sheer unadulterated disrespect of it was breathtaking. We had been married for 6 years. We had a life, a home, a history, and she had just detonated all of it in a drunken impulsive act of breathtaking stupidity and then sent me a picture of the bomb. A lot of guys in my position would have gotten angry. They would have started throwing things, screaming, calling her 100 times to demand an explanation. But I'm not most guys. I'm the chief financial officer for a Fortune 500 company. My entire career is built on a single principle. When a crisis hits, you don't get emotional. You get strategic. You assess the damage, identify the liabilities, and then you execute a plan to mitigate the risk and neutralize the threat. My wife had just become a threat. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't scream. I took a screenshot of the text message, saved it to a secure folder, and then typed a one-word reply. Perfect. Then I got out of bed, went to my home office, and started to build my war room. Update 1. The hours between 3 a.m. and sunrise on that Saturday morning were the most productive of my life. My first call was to my lawyer, not my usual corporate attorney, but my personal one, a man named Simon Reed. Simon is a shark, a man who specializes in the kind of highest asset, high-conflict divorces that make headlines. I woke him up. He wasn't happy about it until I explained the situation. She sent you a photo? He asked, his voice suddenly sharp and awake and a text message admitting to it. Yes, I said. I have it saved. Okay, he said, a note of grim excitement in his voice. Here's what you're going to do. First, do not contact her again. Not a text, not a call, nothing. Second, I want you to go to our bank's website right now and freeze every single joint account you have. Checking, savings, credit cards, everything. She's in Vegas with her new husband. I guarantee you she's burning through your money as we speak. We need to cut off the supply line. While he was still on the phone, I logged into our online banking portal. We had 3 joint credit cards with 6-figure limits. I looked at the recent activity. There were thousands of dollars in charges from the last 24 hours. A first-class flight to Vegas, a suite at the Bellagio, a $5,000 dinner at a celebrity chef's restaurant, a $10,000 cash advance from a casino ATM. It was a pre-honeymoon spending spree funded entirely by me. I clicked the button to freeze all cards, reporting them as potentially fraudulent. I then put a freeze on our joint checking and savings accounts. The financial pipeline was severed. Done. I told Simon. Good, he said. Now, the next part is important. What your wife has just done is not just grounds for divorce. It is a crime. It's called bigamy. It is a felony in our state. Do you understand? I do, I said, a cold sense of purpose beginning to form. We are not going to treat this as a simple marital dispute, Simon continued. We are going to treat this as a criminal act. I am going to contact a colleague of mine in the district attorney's office first thing on Monday morning. But we need more than just a text message. We need official proof. That became my next task. I knew the name of the hotel they were staying at from the credit card statement. I also knew that many Vegas wedding chapels now live streamed their ceremonies online. I spent the next hour scouring the websites of every cheap tacky wedding chapel within a 2 m radius of the Bellagio. And then I found it. A place called the Starlight Chapel had a watch live feature. Their archive from the previous night had a video file labeled Vance Wedding. I clicked on it and there they were. The video was grainy. The audio was terrible, but it was undeniable. It was Evelyn in a short white dress and Marcus Vance in an ill-fitting suit standing in front of an Elvis impersonator. I watched them exchange vows. I watched them sign the marriage certificate. I downloaded the video file and saved it. But I wasn't done. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a corporate one. Marcus Vance wasn't just my wife's boss. He was my colleague. We were both senior vice presidents at the same company. Two sharks circling the same promotion to the Soite. We were rivals and he had just made a fatal career-ending mistake. He had engaged in a relationship with a subordinate, my wife, a clear and flagrant violation of our company's code of conduct. And he had done it in the most public, idiotic way imaginable. My next call was to a man named David Chen, the head of our company's internal audit and compliance department. I woke him up, too. I explained that I had uncovered a serious breach of corporate policy involving a senior executive and a subordinate and that it had significant legal and ethical implications. I told him I had irrefutable evidence. He told me to be in his office at 7 a.m. By the time the sun came up, the pieces were all in place. The money was frozen. The evidence was secured. The lawyers, both corporate and personal, were being activated. Evelyn and Marcus were probably just waking up in their honeymoon suite, blissfully unaware that they were not just hungover, but that their entire lives were about to be systematically dismantled. Update 2. The meeting with David Chen in the empty, silent office building on that Saturday morning was short and brutal. I laid out the facts, presented the text message, the video of the wedding, and the credit card statements showing Marcus had used company funds disguised as travel expenses to pay for the first-class flight. Chen, a man with ice water in his veins, just nodded. He took copies of my evidence and made a single phone call to the chairman of the board. An emergency board meeting was convened via video conference within the hour. I was not a part of that meeting, but the fallout was immediate. Marcus Vance was suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. His corporate accounts were frozen. His access to the building and all company systems was revoked. By 9 a.m. on Saturday, he was a ghost. Meanwhile, Simon was working his own channels. He had spoken to his contact in the DA's office. The evidence was more than enough to proceed. A warrant was issued for Evelyn's arrest on the charge of bigamy. Simon also did something brilliant. He contacted the airport police department and gave them the warrant number and Evelyn's flight information for her return on Sunday evening. He explained the situation and requested that they meet her at the gate upon her arrival to execute the warrant. He wanted this to be public. He wanted it to be humiliating. But we weren't the only ones on the offensive. Simon had hired a PI to get the name and contact information for Marcus Vance's real wife, a woman named Jennifer. By Saturday afternoon, Simon had her on the phone. He explained the situation and then he emailed her the proof, the text, the video, the marriage certificate. The reaction was, as expected, explosive. Jennifer Vance was not a woman to be trifled with. She was from a wealthy, powerful family, and she immediately hired the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state. She also, it turned out, had a flair for the dramatic. She told Simon she would be at the airport on Sunday night to welcome her husband home. The rest of Saturday and Sunday were a strange, surreal waiting game. My phone was a constant barrage of frantic, unanswered calls and texts from Evelyn. The freeze on the accounts had clearly hit. Why aren't my cards working? Did you cancel everything? What is wrong with you? I can't pay for the hotel. Marcus cards are declined, too. We're going to be thrown out. I didn't respond. I just watched from a distance as the consequences of their actions began to cascade. On Sunday evening, I was not at the airport. I was at home watching a live news feed from a local TV station's helicopter on my computer. A reporter had gotten a tip about a developing situation at the airport. I watched as Evelyn and Marcus' flight pulled up to the gate. I watched them walk out of the jet bridge looking tired, stressed, and angry. And then I watched as their world fell apart. They were met at the gate by 3 entities all at once. The first were 2 uniformed police officers. The second was Jennifer Vance, her face a mask of cold white fury. And the third was a news camera. The scene was pure unadulterated chaos. The officers approached Evelyn. "Ma'am, are you Evelyn Miller?" they asked as she stammered a yes. They informed her she was under arrest for bigamy. As they were putting her in handcuffs, Jennifer Vance stepped forward and slapped Marcus across the face. A loud sharp crack that echoed through the silent terminal. "Congratulations on the wedding, you cheating piece of filth," she screamed as the news camera zoomed in on Marcus' stunned red-shaked face. It was all there, broadcast on live television for the entire city to see. My wife in handcuffs, being led away by police, her new husband, a disgraced executive, being publicly assaulted by his real wife. It was a perfect, beautiful, and devastatingly final act of self-destruction. And all I had to do was send one perfect text message and let the dominoes fall. Final update. It's been a year. The legal and personal fallout from that weekend in Vegas was a long, messy, and incredibly public affair. But it was a battle that was fought and won before Evelyn even stepped on the plane back home. Evelyn's arrest at the airport was just the beginning. She spent 2 nights in jail before her parents, horrified and humiliated, bailed her out. She was facing a felony charge and she had no money, no job, and no allies. She tried to argue that the wedding was a drunken joke, but the signed marriage certificate, the video, and her own text message made that an impossible defense. In the end, to avoid prison time, she pleaded no contest to a lesser misdemeanor charge. She was sentenced to 2 years of probation, a hefty fine, and 200 hours of community service. Our divorce was swift and brutal. The bigamy charge gave me absolute and total leverage. The divorce decree was a document of complete and total surrender on her part. She waived all rights to alimony, to my assets, to my retirement accounts, to everything. She walked away with nothing but her personal belongings and a criminal record. Marcus Vance's fate was equally grim. He was fired from our company for gross misconduct. His divorce from Jennifer was one of the most expensive in the state's history. She took him for everything. The house, the cars, his investment accounts, everything. The last I heard, he's working as a mid-level manager at a small no-name company, a pathetic shadow of his former self. The company, in the wake of the scandal, underwent a major restructuring. The board, impressed with my decisive and ethical handling of the crisis, promoted me. I now hold the SOIT position that Marcus and I were both vying for. Evelyn, after the divorce, was a ghost. Her parents, pillars of their community, were so deeply ashamed that they reportedly gave her an ultimatum. Move to another city and start over or be completely cut off. She chose to move. She's living somewhere in another state now, working an entry-level job, trying to rebuild a life from the ashes of the one she so carelessly burned down. I saw her once about 6 months ago. I was on a business trip walking through an airport in a city I rarely visit. I saw a woman who looked vaguely familiar working at a coffee kiosk. It was her. She was wearing a stained apron and a paper hat, her face pale and tired. She didn't see me. I just kept walking. My revenge was not born of rage. It was a simple, logical execution of consequences. She and her boss thought they were playing a game, a secret, thrilling game of infidelity and corporate ladder climbing. They didn't realize they were playing it against a man whose entire life is about understanding the rules and using them to win. They sent me a picture of their victory. I simply sent them the